My mother told my kids I chose my new wife over them, hid every gift and card I sent for 3 years, then started crying when they called me a stranger. Now she wants me to pay her rent while I file for grandparent contact limits. She was standing in my driveway when I pulled up from work Tuesday. Just standing there with her arms crossed, waiting. My son Jake is 14 now and my daughter Emma is 11. I haven't seen them in person since the divorce 3 years ago because my ex got primary custody and moved 2 hours away. But I've sent birthday gifts, Christmas presents, cards for every occasion. Called twice a week even though they barely talked. I thought they were just adjusting. Turns out my mother had been driving to my ex's house every time I sent something, taking it before the kids saw it. My ex didn't stop her because the kids needed stability, and apparently I wasn't providing that by remarrying. I only found out because Emma called me last month. Out of nowhere. She's 11 and she asked me point blank, "Dad, why did you abandon us for your new wife?" I nearly drove off the road. I told her I never abandoned anyone. That I called all the time, that I sent things. She said, "Grandma says you forgot about us." So I started digging. Called my ex. She got defensive immediately. Said my mother had been helping because I was too focused on my new life. I asked what the hell that meant and she admitted my mother had been taking the packages. Every single one. 3 years worth. I showed up at my mother's house that night with my wife Sarah. My mother tried to shut the door on us. I pushed it open and told her I wanted every gift I'd ever sent back right now. She started crying, actual tears, saying I was so angry now and that she was protecting the children from my choices. My wife Sarah stepped forward and said, "Where are the presents?" My mother looked at Sarah like she'd spit on her. "This is your fault. He chose you over his own children." I lost it. Told her she had 30 seconds to get everything or I was calling the police for theft. She stumbled to her garage and there they were. Boxes and boxes. 3 birthdays worth of gifts for each kid. Christmases. A bike for Jake that he'd wanted when he was 11. A dollhouse for Emma that she'd asked for when she was 8. Cards where I'd written how much I missed them. All sitting in her garage in the dark gathering dust. Sarah helped me load everything into our car. My mother stood in the driveway crying, saying I was abandoning her too, just like I abandoned my kids. I told her she was a liar and a manipulator and I never wanted to see her again. Then last week, Emma called again. She'd found out about the gifts because my ex finally told her. Emma was crying. She said, "Grandma told us you didn't love us anymore." She apologized to me. My 11-year-old daughter apologized for believing her own grandmother. I drove to my ex's place that Saturday with all the gifts. My ex let me see the kids for the first time in months. Jake wouldn't look at me at first. But when he saw the bike, his face just crumpled. He said, "You remembered?" Of course I remembered. I'd never forgotten. Emma hugged me so hard I thought my ribs would crack. She wouldn't let go. She kept saying, "I'm sorry, Daddy, I'm sorry." It broke something in me. My own mother did this. She made my children think I didn't love them. For 3 years. The next day my mother showed up at my house. I didn't let her in. She yelled through the door that she couldn't pay her rent because I'd cut her off financially. I haven't given her money in 6 months because she kept making comments about Sarah. She said she'd be evicted and it would be my fault. I told her through the door that she destroyed my relationship with my kids and I didn't owe her anything. She screamed that I was abandoning my own mother. That she did everything for me. That Sarah had poisoned me against my family. I opened the door just to look at her. She looked smaller somehow, pathetic. She was still crying but it felt fake now. Performed. I said, "You told my kids I didn't love them. You stole from them. You're not my family anymore." I closed the door. She banged on it for 20 minutes before she left. Yesterday I filed paperwork to legally limit her contact with my kids. My ex is supporting it after seeing how damaged they were. The lawyer says it's a strong case given the evidence of parental alienation and the documented theft. My mother sent me a text last night. "You'll regret this when I'm gone. I'm your mother." I blocked her number. But now my aunt keeps calling saying I'm being cruel. That my mother is just old and confused and I'm abandoning her when she needs me. That she raised me and I owe her. My uncle showed up at my work saying family is supposed to forgive. Sarah says I'm doing the right thing but I can see she's worried I'm going to break. My kids are talking to me again but Jake still flinches sometimes when I hug him, like he's waiting for me to leave. My mother is probably going to lose her apartment. She has no savings because she spent everything on who knows what. Part of me feels sick about it. She's 67. But then I remember Emma crying and apologizing for something that wasn't her fault. I don't know. Am I the asshole for cutting off my mother financially and legally after what she did? My mother showed up at my son's school yesterday and tried to sign him out early. The office called me immediately because I'd already flagged her name in their system after filing the paperwork. The secretary said my mother told them there was a family emergency and that I'd asked her to pick Jake up. When they called to verify, I was in a meeting and my heart just dropped seeing the school's number. I left work right then. Drove straight there. My mother was still in the office arguing with the principal when I arrived. She saw me walk in and her whole face changed. Went from angry to this weird, pitiful expression like she was the victim. I just wanted to see my grandson, she said. Her voice was shaking but I couldn't tell if it was real or not anymore. The principal looked at me and I nodded. He told my mother she needed to leave immediately or he'd call the police. She started crying again. Same performative tears as before. She looked at me like I was supposed to defend her. I didn't say anything, just stood there until she left. Jake was waiting in the nurse's office. He looked terrified. Asked me if Grandma was taking him away. I told him no. That would never happen. But I could see he didn't fully believe me. 3 years of poison doesn't wash out in a few weeks. That night I called my lawyer. She said what my mother did was serious, that showing up at the school after I'd explicitly cut contact was evidence for the case. But she also warned me it might get worse before it gets better. People like my mother don't just give up. She was right. 2 days later my mother called my work from a number I didn't recognize. Got transferred to my desk before I realized who it was. She said, "Please, I'm going to be homeless. Is that what you want?" I told her I wanted her to leave me and my kids alone. She said I was being cruel. That I'd changed. That my new wife had turned me against my own blood. I hung up, blocked that number too. Then my aunt showed up at my house. Just appeared on my doorstep Saturday morning while my wife was making breakfast with Emma. My aunt started immediately, saying I was breaking my mother's heart. That I needed to forgive her because she's old and didn't understand what she was doing. I asked my aunt if she knew my mother had been stealing gifts meant for my children for 3 years. If she knew my mother had told my kids I abandoned them. My aunt got quiet. Then she said, "Your mother was trying to protect them from being confused." That's when my wife stepped into the doorway. She didn't say anything, just stood there with her arms crossed. My aunt looked at her and something in her expression hardened. "This is between family," my aunt said. I told her my wife is my family. My kids are my family. My mother stopped being family when she chose to hurt them. My aunt left but not before saying I'd regret this. The hearing for the contact restriction is next month. My ex has been cooperative, which is strange. We barely spoke for 3 years and now she keeps texting me updates about the kids. Last night she sent me a message saying she was sorry. That she didn't realize how bad it had gotten until she saw the boxes of gifts in my mother's garage. I don't know what to do with that apology. Part of me is still angry at her for letting it happen. But the other part knows my mother is good at manipulation. She fooled me for years too. Jake is doing better but he still has moments. Yesterday he asked me if I promise I won't leave again. I told him I never left, but I understand why he feels that way. He cried and I held him and I wanted to scream at my mother for doing this to him. Emma is different. She's angry now. Angry at her grandmother. She told me yesterday that she wants to testify at the hearing. She's 11 years old and she wants to tell a judge what her grandmother did. My lawyer says it's allowed if the judge permits it, but I don't know if I want to put her through that. My mother sent another text from yet another number. This one said, "I gave up everything for you. You were supposed to take care of me." I stared at that message for a long time. Because the thing is, I did take care of her. Paid her bills for years. Helped her when she needed it. But it was never enough. She always wanted more and when I set boundaries she found new ways to hurt me. This time she used my kids. The eviction notice went through according to my uncle. He called me drunk last night yelling that I was letting my mother end up on the streets. That I was a terrible son. I listened to him rant for 2 minutes then hung up. My wife found me sitting in the garage afterward. She didn't ask if I was okay because she knows I'm not. She just sat with me until I was ready to go back inside. The thing nobody tells you about cutting off a parent is how much it feels like grief. Even when you know you're doing the right thing. Even when they deserve it. But then I think about Jake asking if I promise not to leave. About Emma apologizing for believing her grandmother's lies. About 3 years of birthday cards sitting in a dark garage. My mother hired a lawyer and served me with papers claiming grandparent rights. I got them at work 3 days ago. My boss handed me the envelope looking concerned and I just stood there in the break room staring at it. The legal language was dense but the message was clear. She's claiming I'm denying her access to her grandchildren without cause and that my kids need her in their lives for their emotional well-being. The irony almost made me laugh, except I was too angry. I called my lawyer immediately. She'd been expecting this apparently. Said my mother's case was weak given the documentation we have, but that it would still cost money and time to fight. Court date is set for 6 weeks from now. That same night my uncle showed up at my door again. This time he wasn't alone. He brought my aunt and 2 of my cousins I haven't spoken to in years. They stood on my porch like some kind of intervention committee. My uncle did most of the talking. Said I was tearing the family apart. That my mother made one mistake and I was punishing her forever. That she's getting older and doesn't have much time left and I'd regret this when she's gone. I asked him if he thought hiding 3 years of gifts and telling my kids I abandoned them was one mistake. He got quiet. Then my aunt spoke up. She said my mother only did it because she was worried about the kids adjusting to my new marriage. That she thought she was helping. My wife was standing behind me in the hallway. I heard her make this noise, something between a laugh and a gasp. She stepped forward and asked my aunt how exactly traumatizing 2 children helps them adjust to anything. My aunt's face went red. She told my wife to stay out of family business. That she'd caused enough damage already. I told them all to leave. My uncle started arguing but I just closed the door. They stood outside yelling for a few minutes before finally leaving. My wife and I sat on the couch afterward not saying anything. Emma came downstairs asking who was yelling. I told her it was nothing and she looked at me like she knew I was lying. The next morning my ex called. She sounded stressed. Said my mother had contacted her asking her to testify that I'm an unfit father. That the kids are better off with supervised visits only. My ex told her no, but my mother apparently lost it. Started screaming that my ex was betraying her, that she'd helped her during the divorce. I didn't know that. Didn't know my mother had been involved at all back then. My ex admitted she'd let my mother visit the kids regularly after the separation. That my mother would say things about me and my wife and she just let it happen because she was angry too. She apologized again. Said she didn't realize how deep it went until now. I wanted to yell at her but I was too exhausted. Just thanked her for refusing to testify and hung up. Jake's grades have been slipping. Got an email from his teacher yesterday saying he's been distracted in class. Spacing out. I picked him up from school and asked him about it. He said he keeps thinking about the hearing. About having to talk to a judge. I told him he doesn't have to testify if he doesn't want to. That I'd never force him. He looked at me and said, "But what if the judge makes me see Grandma again if I don't?" My lawyer assured me that's unlikely given everything, but I can't promise Jake that. Can't tell him with absolute certainty that my mother won't get some kind of visitation. The not knowing is killing both my kids. Emma is still angry but it's changed. Now she's angry at me too sometimes. Asked me 2 nights ago why I didn't notice what Grandma was doing sooner. Why I didn't protect them. I didn't have a good answer. Told her I'm sorry, that I should have known. She cried and I held her, but I could feel how much damage has been done. Not just by my mother but by all of us. My mother's eviction went through. My cousin sent me a text with a picture of her moving boxes into a storage unit. The message said, "Hope you're happy." I'm not happy. I'm furious and sad and guilty all at once. My wife found me looking at the picture last night. She took my phone and set it down. Told me my mother is facing consequences for her own choices. That I didn't do this to her, she did it to herself. Logically I know that's true. But there's still this voice that sounds like my uncle saying I'm abandoning my own mother. That family is supposed to forgive. Except my mother didn't just hurt me. She hurt my kids. Deliberately. For years. The preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks. My lawyer thinks the judge will dismiss the case pretty quickly once they see the evidence. But she also warned me my mother might escalate before then. That people who file grandparent rights claims usually don't stop easily. I asked what escalate means. She said showing up at the house, trying to contact the kids directly, making false claims to CPS. I haven't slept properly in days. Yesterday my mother sent flowers to my office. No card, but I knew they were from her. I threw them in the dumpster outside. My coworkers saw and nobody asked questions. Jake asked me last night if Grandma is really going to be homeless. I told him I don't know where she's staying but that it's not his responsibility to worry about. He nodded, but I could tell he's carrying that weight anyway. My son is 14 and he's worried about the woman who stole 3 years of his childhood from him. That's what my mother has done. Even now she's still hurting them. My mother showed up at Emma's school play Thursday night and I didn't know until she was already sitting in the auditorium. Emma had the lead role in their winter production. She'd been practicing for weeks and this was the first time she'd asked me to come to something at her school since we reconnected. I got there early with my wife, saved seats in the third row. The lights were dimming when I saw her. My mother was sitting in the back corner, alone, staring straight at the stage. My wife noticed me tense up and followed my gaze. She grabbed my hand and whispered, "Do you want to get security?" I didn't know what to do. If I caused a scene it would ruin Emma's night, but letting my mother sit there felt like letting her win something. The play started before I could decide. Emma came on stage and she was incredible. Confident and bright and nothing like the scared kid who'd apologized to me for believing her grandmother's lies. I tried to focus on her but I kept glancing back at my mother. She was crying, just sitting there in the dark watching her granddaughter and crying silently. After the play ended, I told my wife to take Emma backstage while I dealt with it. I walked to the back of the auditorium and my mother saw me coming. She stood up like she was going to run but I blocked the aisle. "You need to leave," I said. She looked smaller than I remembered. Older. She was wearing the same coat she'd had for 10 years and her hair looked like she hadn't washed it in days. "I just wanted to see her perform," my mother said. Her voice was hoarse. "I didn't talk to anyone. I stayed in the back. You're not supposed to be here. The school has your name flagged." They didn't stop me at the door. I realized she was right. Someone had screwed up. My mother had just walked in with all the other parents and nobody checked. "Emma was beautiful up there," my mother said. "She's grown so much." Something about the way she said it made me angrier than anything else she'd done. Like she had any right to comment on my daughter's growth after what she'd stolen from her. "You don't get to do this," I said. "You don't get to show up and act like a proud grandmother after everything. I am her grandmother. That doesn't change just because you're angry at me." People were starting to leave the auditorium. Walking past us, a few parents glanced over curiously but kept moving. "The hearing is in 8 days," I said. "Your lawyer is going to lose and you're going to have a legal order keeping you away from my kids. This right here, showing up after I've told you to stay away, this is just more evidence." My mother's face crumpled. "I'm living in my car. Did you know that? Your uncle won't take me in. Your aunt said I made my own bed. I've been sleeping in a parking lot behind the grocery store for 2 weeks." I wanted to feel sorry for her. Wanted to feel something other than this cold anger. But all I could think about was Jake asking if I promised not to leave again. "That's not my problem," I said. "I'm your mother. You stopped being my mother when you used my kids to punish me." She reached out like she was going to touch my arm but I stepped back. Her hand dropped and she just stood there looking lost. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "No. A mistake is forgetting a birthday or saying something thoughtless. You systematically lied to my children for 3 years. You made them think I didn't love them. That's not a mistake, that's cruelty." Emma appeared at the end of the aisle with my wife behind her. She saw my mother and froze. Her whole face changed, went from happy to something harder. My mother saw her too. "Emma, honey, you were wonderful tonight." Emma didn't say anything, just stared at her grandmother with this expression I couldn't read. My mother took a step toward her and I moved to block her path. "Don't. I just wanted to talk to her." "No." My mother looked past me and Emma. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I thought I was helping but I was wrong and I'm sorry." Emma's face didn't change. She looked at my mother for a long moment then turned to me. "Can we go home now?" Not a single word to her grandmother. No acknowledgement at all. Just a simple question like my mother wasn't even there. It broke something in my mother's expression. She made this sound, almost like a gasp, and then she was pushing past me toward the exit. I let her go. My wife put her arm around Emma and we walked out together. In the parking lot, Emma asked if Grandma was really living in her car. I told her the truth, that I didn't know for sure but it was possible. Emma nodded slowly. "Good." That one word scared me more than anything else in this whole mess. My 11-year-old daughter looked at me and said good about her grandmother being homeless. We drove home in silence. Emma went straight to her room. My wife and I sat in the kitchen and she asked if I was okay. I wasn't okay. My mother's face when Emma ignored her kept replaying in my head. The next morning my lawyer called. Someone had reported the incident at the school and now she's adding it to the evidence file. My mother violated the informal boundaries we'd set and did it in front of witnesses. The lawyer sounded almost pleased. I felt sick. Jake came home from his dad's house yesterday and asked if it was true that Grandma was at Emma's play. Word had gotten around apparently. I confirmed it and he got quiet. Then he asked if Grandma tried to talk to him would I stop her. I promised him yes. Always. He looked relieved but also sad and I don't know how to fix that. The hearing is in 6 days and my lawyer keeps saying we have a strong case but I can't stop thinking about my mother's face when Emma walked away from her. The judge dismissed my mother's case in less than 15 minutes. I sat in that courtroom with my lawyer on one side and my ex on the other, watching my mother's attorney try to argue that she deserved access to my kids. He brought up her age, her isolation, her rights as a grandparent. The judge listened for maybe 5 minutes before cutting him off. She asked if my mother had any response to the documented evidence of parental alienation. The 3 years of hidden gifts. The deliberate lies told to minor children. My mother's lawyer fumbled through some excuse about misunderstanding boundaries and the judge just looked tired. I've seen enough, she said. She granted a full no-contact order. My mother is legally barred from any communication with Jake or Emma until they're both 18. No calls, no letters, no showing up at schools or events. If she violates it, there will be criminal charges. My mother made this sound when the judge said it. Not crying, something worse. Like all the air left her body at once. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. We left through the back exit to avoid her but she was waiting by my car anyway. My ex saw her first and put herself between my mother and me. Told her to leave before we called the police. My mother ignored her completely. Just looked at me with these empty eyes and said, "I hope you're satisfied." I wasn't satisfied. I was exhausted. She left before courthouse security got there. That was 4 days ago and I haven't heard from her since. My uncle sent one text calling me a disgrace and then nothing. Radio silence from the whole family. The kids are doing better. Emma's anger has softened into something else, maybe relief. She asked me yesterday if Grandma could ever come back and I told her the truth. Not until you're an adult and even then only if you want her to. She nodded and went back to her homework like I'd just told her what we were having for dinner. Jake is struggling more. He keeps asking questions about where my mother is living, if she's okay, if she has food. I tell him I don't know and that it's not his job to worry about her. He nods but I can see it eating at him. My lawyer warned me my mother might try to appeal but her attorney already withdrew from the case. Said in his filing that there was no legal basis to continue. So it's done. Legally finished. My ex and I have been talking more. Real conversations, not just logistics about the kids. She apologized again last week for letting my mother poison them against me. Said she was so angry during the divorce that she didn't see what was happening until it was too late. I told her I forgave her. Not sure if that's completely true yet but I'm trying. We're working out a new custody arrangement. Something more balanced. The kids will stay with her during the school week but I'll have them every weekend and half the holidays. It's not perfect but it's more time than I've had in 3 years. Jake came to stay with me this past weekend. We were shooting hoops in the driveway Saturday afternoon when he just stopped mid-throw and asked if I thought Grandma would ever forgive me. The question caught me off guard. I asked him if he thought I needed her forgiveness. He bounced the ball a few times, thinking, I don't know, she's the one who lied but she seems really sad. I sat down on the curb and he sat next to me. Told him that sometimes people face consequences for their choices and those consequences feel unfair to them even when they're completely justified. That his grandmother hurt him and Emma badly and she has to live with what that cost her. Do you feel bad for her? He asked. I thought about it honestly. Sometimes. But then I remember you asking me if I promised not to leave and I stopped feeling bad. He leaned against my shoulder and we sat there until the sun started setting. Emma is thriving. Got straight A's last quarter. Joined the drama club and already landed a part in the spring musical. She talks about my wife now without that edge she used to have. Asked if she could call her by her first name instead of just Dad's wife, and my wife actually cried when Emma did it the first time. Things are getting better but there's still this weight. This absence where my mother used to be. I drove past the grocery store she mentioned last week. The one with the parking lot where she said she'd been sleeping. Didn't see her car but I found myself looking anyway. Wondered if she was really there or if that was just another manipulation. My wife caught me staring out the window that night. Asked what I was thinking about. I told her the truth, that I kept wondering if my mother was okay and hating myself for wondering. She said that's what makes me different from my mother. That I can still care about someone who hurt me. That it doesn't make me weak, it makes me human. I don't know if that's true but I'm trying to believe it. My cousin reached out yesterday. The one who sent me the picture of my mother's storage unit. She said my mother is staying with a friend in another state. That she's physically fine but completely broken. That she talks about the kids constantly. My cousin asked if there was any chance I'd reconsider. Let my mother write a letter at least. I said no, the order is in place for a reason and I'm not undermining it. She called me heartless and hung up. Maybe I'm heartless. Maybe cutting off your mother completely makes you a terrible person regardless of what she did. But then I think about Emma saying, "Good," when I told her about my mother being homeless. The coldness in my daughter's voice. That's what my mother created. Jake asked me last night if families always hurt each other this much. I told him no, that most families have problems but not like this. That what his grandmother did was a choice, not inevitable. He seemed to accept that, but I could tell he was filing it away with all the other complicated truths he's learning too young. The hearing was supposed to bring closure, but it just brought quiet. This strange empty space where my mother used to be and nobody quite knows how to fill it. My wife says time will help. That eventually the guilt will fade and we'll just have the peace that comes with healthy boundaries. I hope she's right, but late at night when I can't sleep I still see my mother's face in that courtroom. That sound she made when the judge handed down the order. And I wonder if there was another way to handle this that wouldn't have ended with her losing everything. Then morning comes and Jake asks if I promised to pick him up from school, and I remember why I did what I did. My kids are healing. They laugh more now. They hug me without hesitation. Emma performed in that play and didn't spend the whole time looking for me in the crowd wondering if I'd show. That's what matters. Not my mother's tears or my family's judgment or my own guilt at 3 in the morning. My kids know I love them now. Finally. After 3 years of my mother's poison, they know. And if the cost of that was everything else, then I'd make the same choice again.